If you've spent any time at all reading about psychedelics, you've probably come across the phrases set and setting. Set referring to the mindset that you're in, going into the experience, and then setting, of course, referring to the environment. And you've probably been told that these are the things that most affect your experience. Those are supposed to be the two biggest factors influencing psychedelic experience, and people have thought that for a long time. But there's more to the story than that. It's not wrong, it's just incomplete. I'm Clayton Nickus. I'm a licensed psychedelic therapist, Colorado's first fully licensed natural medicine clinical facilitator. And today I'm going to talk to you about the 4 factors that are actually most influential in psychedelic experiences of all kinds. The framework of set and setting was pretty good for the time. It was popularized in the 1960s through the work of Timothy Leary and other psychedelic pioneers. Set, like I said, referred to the mindset, your thoughts, emotions, sensations, beliefs, expectations, prior experiences even, all existing at the time of session. Setting referred to the physical environment and the people around you. I would also say that setting includes the time period that you're in. For the 1960s, this was a useful framework, and it was a pretty big step beyond earlier models that treated psychedelics like any other pharmaceutical. Dose a patient, observe the effects, write it up. Leary, Ram Dass, before he became Ram Dass, Richard Alpert, and contemporaries of that kind recognized that context matters. And that was important. That was a big improvement over the pure pharmacological view of psychedelics. But modern psychedelic therapy, our new conceptualization of these medicines, has taken it even further. Researchers at the Imperial College of London have developed the IPPS, the Imperial Psychedelic Predictor Scale. This is a 9-question survey that measures things like set, rapport between yourself and the people that you'll be working with, and intention as predictors of psychedelic outcome. And this was a step forward. The IPPS is really good. It adds the quality of the relationship as a factor that hadn't previously been considered. But 9 factors is a lot of things to consider. 9 factors is a lot of things to track for anybody. And so I've drawn from that and my own experience to create 4 factors, boiled it all down, that I think are the most important predictors and actually have seen are the most important predictors of psychedelic experiences, both in clinical and non-clinical settings. I use this 4-pillar framework in my work with clients in psilocybin sessions. They're the 4 essential and interconnected things that determine the course of a psychedelic experience. They are safety, connection, intention, and surrender. And these aren't just checkboxes, though they might sound like it as I list them off. They overlap and reinforce each other. Safety makes surrender possible. Connection deepens intention. Intention gives meaning to whatever arises. And surrender allows the medicine to actually do its work. Surrender is the thing that's underneath all of it. When all 4 of these things are strong in somebody, when safety, connection, intention, and surrender are in place, it's very likely that a positive experience will unfold. Maybe not easy, but ultimately positive. If any of them are weak, if there's not enough safety, if there's not enough connection, intention, or surrender, that's predictive of a more difficult experience. Again, maybe not bad, but potentially more difficult. Let's start with safety. This is the foundation, pillar 1. Safety is the thing that without it, nothing else would be possible. Nothing else really works without safety. And when I say safety in this context, I'm talking about both psychological and physiological safety. Physical safety in psychedelic work starts with screening. It's a form that you fill out that tells us about your physical and psychological history. It helps us identify risk factors before you ever even sit down for a dosing session. And there are certain conditions that disqualify people from psychedelic work. That's like a history of psychosis, bipolar disorder, high cardiovascular risk that's not managed by medication. Prescription of lithium is something that is unsafe for psilocybin work. You can't be on lithium and take psilocybin because that increases seizure risk. So those are the safety components. And believe me, I really don't like telling people that they're not a good fit for this work. It's not fun when somebody comes seeking psilocybin therapy only to be told it's not safe. But it is incredibly important. So beyond internal safety, the kind that we track with the screening form, there's environmental safety to be considered and curated. In clinical psychedelic therapy, we create environments that are free of hazards. We're going to make sure that there's not sharp objects, that there's not water that you might drown in, that there's not fire, that there's not something to fall over. These are the pieces of physical safety that really matter and part of what was being gotten at by setting. Physical safety is actually the easier component of safety, right? Ensuring that there are no physical contraindications, no diseases or illnesses that are going to be a problem or medications. And setting up the physical environment, literally, are some of the easier aspects of safety. A more nuanced component of safety that matters just as much is emotional and psychological safety. You need to feel in a psychedelic session secure enough to express yourself fully and without the fear of judgment. That means you need to feel safe with your facilitator, safe enough to cry, safe enough to be really angry, safe enough to shake and move in strange ways if you need to, safe enough to say something that doesn't make any sense, safe enough to be non-logical, safe enough to be vulnerable in ways that maybe you've never been before. That kind of safety, emotional, psychological, relational safety, matters immensely because psychedelics will often bring up material that you've been avoiding. We all think that we know who we are, and then we take a psychedelic and we discover, oh, there's a lot more to us than we understood or were acknowledging, and we need to have the safety to work with that. The primary mechanism, actually, through which psychedelics heal is the cessation of experiential avoidance. Psychedelics are wonderful tools of therapy because they help us recognize those aspects of us that we haven't been able to recognize. And if we don't feel safe in the environment to do that, then there can be aspects of us that suppress that material, that push it down, try to push it away, that try to protect us from the very thing that we experience. You can fight the medicine if you don't feel safe to experience it, and that creates undue difficulty. And this is why choosing the right facilitator is really important. A competent facilitator, practitioner, therapist understands how to help you co-create an environment that is trusting, that is compassionate, that is accepting for your experience, to allow anything that arises to arise without resistance. And we'll talk more about the resistance piece when we get to surrender. Element number 2 is connection. Connection operates on 2 levels, a lot like safety. It's the connection to yourself and your connection to the people around you, especially the people that'll be in your experience. Connection to people outside of the dosing session does matter and does influence the experience. This references connection to other people in your world, connection to family, connection to community. Those kinds of relationships do influence how a psychedelic experience goes. Also, the level of connection to yourself is incredibly important. Somebody who knows themselves, has a meaningful connection to themselves and other people in their life, will generally, but not always, have a more tolerable time on a psychedelic. They have a stable foundation to return to. A person who's a stranger to themselves, on the other hand, somebody who's never really looked inward, somebody who lives in significant social isolation, might have a more intense time. Again, not necessarily a bad time, but a more challenging time, especially during integration. The lack of social connection during integration can make it hard. The experience needs to be woven into daily life. And if there's not a robust daily life that already exists, that can be more challenging. Again, not necessarily contraindicated, not necessarily dangerous, but certainly more difficult. That's connection. Connection to the facilitator or connection to the therapist is also really important. In therapy, we call this rapport or therapeutic alliance, and we know that it's a massive predictor of therapeutic outcome in all kinds of therapy. And this is especially true in psychedelic therapy. The therapeutic relationship is crucial. It's really important. The quality of that relationship, like in other kinds of therapy, is predictive of efficacy. So the more seen you feel, the more heard you feel, the more connected you feel with the people that are in the dosing session, with the facilitator, with the therapist, the more likely you are to receive benefit from the session. Feeling genuinely seen, heard, respected, honored in your experience creates a kind of relational safety that actually allows the work to deepen. And so that's one of the points of interrelationship between safety and connection. A lot of our suffering as humans comes from relationships, actually. Wounds of attachment, relational betrayals, right? The experience of not being seen, not being heard, not being valued by those people who are supposed to love us. That's a really significant and common source of pain for us human beings. In therapy, we often say that wounds of relationship heal in relationship. And so it's like the very thing that hurt us, the relationship, is also one of the things that can help us heal. Relationships in psychedelic therapy and other kinds of therapy can provide corrective experiences. There can be so much presence, so much connection, that it can actually repair the past wounds of connection. And when you're in the presence of a facilitator or a therapist or anybody else who's offering genuine attentiveness and compassion, not performing it, not putting a thing on because they feel like they have to, but actually embodying it, something really profound becomes possible. Like I said, old relational wounds can begin to repair. You can begin to change how you understand yourself in relationship with other people. Simply having somebody present and fully attentive to you for hours can be really healing and reparative, especially for people who haven't had a lot of that kind of love, haven't had a lot of that kind of attention. Pillar 3 is intention. Intention. Friedrich Nietzsche, the existential philosopher, wrote that he who has a why can bear almost any how. Viktor Frankl expanded on this idea, the importance of meaning, in a book called Man's Search for Meaning, which if you haven't read it, I highly recommend it. He used meaning to get through the Holocaust and made a claim that meaning was the thing that helped people survive. The decision to make meaning out of what's happening was predictive of survival. Basically, he said that meaning is the most important thing in the life of a human being. And this is the argument for intention. A psychedelic experience can be a lot of things. It can be joyful. It can also be profoundly uncomfortable. You can encounter things that you don't expect. Horrible, wretched grief and pain and fear, or blissful, ecstatic joy. Memories that you've suppressed about yourself, truths about life and the world and your family and yourself that you'd rather not look at and not acknowledge. And an intention doesn't guarantee that those things won't happen. It doesn't guarantee that the experience is going to be pleasant. But what it does do is give you a reason for moving through all of that. It gives you a reason for facing all of that challenging stuff. It's like an anchor in an ocean of internal experience. An intention in psychedelic work is not a wish. It's not an affirmation. It's not a magical spell that we hope come true. It's not something like, I hope to see beautiful colors and feel happy. At its best, an intention is a statement that encapsulates, that really represents the deepest longing of your heart at this time in your life. It's your reason for doing the psychedelic work, sure, but it's on a deeper level, your reason for existing, your reason for being a human being. Something like, I am living in alignment with my deepest purpose as a statement. Or I'm learning to feel safe in my own body. I am feeling safe in my own body. Something that reflects and affirms the longing of your heart. And even in the saying of it, resonates with emotion. The most powerful intention statements do tend to be positively framed and focused on what you're moving towards rather than what you're moving away from. Something like live a confident and calm life and not get rid of anxiety. Right? Living a confident and calm life is the thing that you would move towards if you got rid of anxiety. So it's not focused on what we don't want. It's focused on what we're moving towards. And when you get it right, it can carry real emotional weight. When you craft an intention statement that is really yours, that really pulls on those strings of your heart, you can feel it resonate through your whole body. It's a very useful tool for a lot of reasons. It does a lot more than just anchor you in the psychedelic session. A good intention statement can also serve as a memory aid, a sort of mnemonic device that helps you pull the psychedelic experience back into your life. So what do I mean by that? Psychedelic experiences can be very dreamlike and ethereal. They can actually be kind of hard to remember and hold on to. A lot of my clients at the end of a session just have sort of fleeting glimpses of what it was like. Maybe an image or two, maybe a feeling or an emotion. The most significant aspects of the experience can be, like dreams, easy to have slip away. And so an intention statement helps us connect language consciously to the unconscious content or material of the session and then return to it. An intention statement is a way that we can consciously return to the sort of unconscious material of a psychedelic journey. In my practice, I invite clients to create an intention statement and affirm it before they take the medicine, to feel it in their body, maybe saying it out loud, maybe saying it inside. And then after the session, to make a daily practice of returning to that intention statement in any way that feels right for them. In that way, every time they affirm the intention statement, they're connecting consciously to the memory of the medicine experience. Think about it like this. A psychedelic experience is like a well that you dig in your system, deep content, and at the bottom there is resource, there's water. The intention statement is like a bucket that you dip down into the well whenever you want and draw back up to water the crops of your life, to bring nourishment and resources into your life. That's the utility of an intention statement. The fourth pillar is surrender. Surrender. This is a very simple idea, but it's actually quite nuanced and can be kind of hard to practice. Some people struggle with the idea of surrender, but it's arguably the most important. Surrender in this context refers to the willingness and the ability to meet reality on reality's terms. It's the ability to allow what's happening internally and externally to happen without judgment, without resistance. It's letting go of preconceived notions of what should happen, of what needs to happen, and instead being with what is happening. That's fundamentally what surrender means. And this is important in psychedelic therapy for a lot of reasons. One of the big ones is in traditional talk therapy. If you look at me and you say, Clay, you know what? I really don't want to talk about that right now. I don't want to go there. As a therapist, I will absolutely honor you. I'll say, okay, wonderful. We don't have to go there. I respect the intelligence of that protection around that piece of information, and we can change the subject. We can move over here or move over there. In psychedelic therapy, when there's medicine on board, we are not the ones that decide that. There is an inner healing intelligence that is sort of guiding and directing the content. And so that means images, thoughts, emotions, sensations can just emerge whether we want them to or not. Memories, feelings just emerge whether we want them to or not. And our job in the psychedelic experience is to surrender to that, to allow the experience to wash over you without resistance, without pushing it away, to be with what's happening, even if it's difficult, even if it's challenging. The metaphor that I often use is like paddling down a river in a kayak. We can paddle left or we can paddle right, but we can't control the direction that the water goes. And the best that we can do for a smooth ride is to point our kayak down the river and paddle in the direction of the flow. We can sort of navigate around obstacles. We can find eddies and pockets where we can hang out for a while, but ultimately the flow of the river is determining where we go more than anything else. If you want to, if you really wanted to try it, you could turn the kayak around and you could paddle in the opposite direction. That is fighting. That is resistance. And it's possible to do, but it creates a lot of difficulty. It creates a lot of friction. And surrender is the way that we point the kayak down the river and allow what's happening, even work with what's happening to happen. Sometimes the river does lead to frightful places. You might come across something you've been avoiding. You might come across something that you don't want to see. And if you do, this is actually really good news, because this confrontation with inner material, this confrontation with those things that we don't want to look at, is the way that psychedelics help us heal, is one of the core mechanisms through which psychedelic therapy actually works. The very thing that you're afraid to face is often the thing that needs to be faced, needs to be looked at and processed and integrated for real healing to occur. Avoidance is often the thing that keeps us stuck. And so if avoidance is keeping us stuck, then confrontation is the medicine that we need. And that's why surrender is important. I do want to be pretty specific and clear about what surrender is and what surrender is not. So surrender means temporarily allowing whatever's happening in the psychedelic session to happen internally and externally. It's not becoming passive about your life. It's trusting that your mind and your body knows what needs to be processed, knows what needs to happen. It's letting go of the need to control or trying to direct. Surrender is temporarily in the session allowing whatever's happening to happen. It's allowing your internal experience to be present fully. It's trusting that your mind and your body and your system knows what needs to be processed and worked through. It's letting go of the need to control or to dictate every single moment of experience. And it's allowing every thought, emotion, image, memory, sensation to wash over you, to exist just as it is. Surrender is not accepting violations of your boundaries. Surrender is not becoming passive about your life. It's not giving up your agency. It's definitely not tolerating harm from other people. Some of my clients, particularly those with military backgrounds, don't really like the word surrender. And that's fine. There's a certain connotation from the context that they're used to. You don't have to use the word surrender. You can use letting go. You could use flow, openness, acceptance, any of those. The concept is really fundamentally the same. And if right now you're thinking, I have no idea how to do that, that's completely fine. Like any skill, surrender can be learned and practiced. In the preparation phase with my clients, I work with them to learn the skill of surrender, and I use somatic mindfulness to do that. One of the most basic and powerful ways to learn surrender is practicing, even in this moment you can do it, noticing, welcoming, and allowing everything that is to be, just as it is, without trying to change it, without making it different. And that's how we practice surrender again and again and again. You don't need to be a master at it before you have a good psychedelic session. You just need to be willing to give it a shot. Like I said earlier, these 4 pillars, safety, connection, intention, and surrender, all work together. You might have picked up that they're not just things that we do once, but they're ongoing practices. You also might notice that these 4 things are not just applicable to the psychedelic experience, but they're applicable to the experience of life. That these practices of safety, connection, intention, and surrender can go on over the course of a lifetime. And when we grow in one, we make others possible. Surrender makes safety possible. Safety makes surrender possible. You really can't let go. You can't surrender if you don't feel safe. So first you create safety, and then surrender increases. Connection deepens both safety and intention, brings us clarity around why we're there. When we're speaking with somebody and we feel connected to, we feel seen, our intention clarifies, our sense of safety increases. Intention provides structure to the surrender, provides meaning to the surrender. It's the why that allows us to bear any how. When all 4 of these things are strong, safety, connection, intention, and surrender, all of the conditions are in place for meaningful healing to occur, for a smooth, although not necessarily easy, psychedelic experience. These are the ideas that Set and Setting were reaching towards, but just didn't quite go far enough. We know the environment matters, the mindset matters, but your felt sense of safety, the quality of your relationships, your connections, the clarity of your intention, and your ability to surrender, the ability to allow what's happening to happen, are all of the things that actually determine the course of a psychedelic experience. This is the best that we can do to prepare. This is the conceptual framework for psychedelic preparation. But it's important to know that even when all of these things are present, psychedelic experiences are inherently unpredictable. So we can do the best that we can to prepare. And then once we do all of these things, once we create safety, connection, intention, and surrender, all we can do is let go, which is why surrender is at the end. We create safety, we create connection, we create intention, and then we surrender. And those are the ideal conditions for a psychedelic experience. If you're considering psychedelic therapy in any context, as a client, as a practitioner, and you're curious about it and you want to know more, give me a follow. I'm going to continue to create videos telling you everything that I know and that I've learned about psychedelic therapy. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.